We are here with work number 64. That's Rocks of the Mojave. I'm going to talk about this one. It just happens to be a good example of the kind of work I've been doing here in the desert over the last 10 years. For one, I've been pouring paint a lot since 1995 when I began my experiments with poured paint. I went through my Jackson Pollock period and studied the color field painters and looked very closely at de Kooning and others. Had the best time in New York because you could see the real work. I went to all the shows, went to the museums on a regular basis. I got to see a lot of the abstract expressionists, the work directly in the flesh. I made the observation, a lot of it's enamel. You know, these guys liked liquid paint, and they poured it, and they dripped it, and they spread it around, and they did all kinds of things. So I decided I needed to experiment with that. So I've been doing this for, hard to believe, but 15 years. So I have a different take. Like most of my work, I like to reference interesting periods in American history and American art. But I've developed quite an original style. For one, it's still based on relief. This happens to be kind of the Mojave fracture zone. So I look at geologic maps, I get out aerial shots, I study the terrain, I build up the terrain with modeling paste and oil paint that's loosely based on the actual site. And then I pour to show a kind of a simulation of rock strata and geologic process, the idea that the world's in flux, that's often, at least has been, molten, and these forces all come to bear. So that's what I'm showing with the paint part of the piece. And then I've added what I call a Secchi tray. Having come back to California, I've always enjoyed collecting rocks, but I've made it quite a passion, and I've developed it into part of the art that I like to incorporate into the paintings. Been studying Japanese garden design and suiseki quite religiously. They have some tremendous principles of rock appreciation and display. So using some of that, and they have a lot of rules and methods that are traditional. I follow some of them, but not all of them. Being a contemporary artist and being eclectic and not a person that follows a lot of rules most of the time, I've given myself the liberty to use some of the principles, but to present them in a unique way that's personal for me and hopefully relates to other people. The idea is that these are segments of the land that exist in the painting. But then in placement, I follow the principles of asymmetrical balance. If you count the number of rocks, 5, it's an odd number. You should always use odd numbers when you're displaying rocks. And I've made a bed of sand that I like to rake, and they become interactive, if you will. One of the things about it's in effect a sand garden, miniature Zen garden on a tray. One of the symbolisms of the Zen garden is the raking of the gravel. If it's raked and orderly and in its entity at peace and displayed in a meaningful design, it allows the viewer to realize that their mind is orderly and at peace. And it's just a great idea, so that's what I've done. These pieces will get disheveled over time. So I've just recently come in and raked it, and I'm feeling very at peace and orderly. So that's Rocks of the Mojave, number 64.